Nintendo released their first handheld, the Game Boy, in September 1990 here in the UK, and when I was 8 years old, my parents got me one for Christmas. Needless to say, I was glued to the console for many years to follow, and was still playing it in high school. One of the games I used to play way back then recently popped into my head, and revisiting it kicked off the idea for this series. So, let's dive in to Adventure Island. Adventure Island is a platformer released in 1991 for the Game Boy. The series has quite a convoluted past. You see, Adventure Island on Game Boy is actually a port of Adventure Island 2 for the NES, but the first in the series to be released on handheld. The original Adventure Island 1 was sort of a variation on Sega's Wonder Boy, but with a different lead character. The Adventure Island sequels moved away completely from Wonder Boy and became their own thing. Side note, Adventure Island 2 on the NES doesn't mess around. When you kill the enemies, their skeletons, or their pale lifeless bodies, drop off the screen. A bit full on for 1991. Needless to say, I didn't know any of this back in the early 90s, and just enjoyed chucking axes at snails. I recently discovered that the lead character is called Master Higgins, or Master Wiggins in the UK version. The basic premise of the game is that the princess, Tina, has been kidnapped, and you need to search across 8 islands to find her. Now where have I heard that set up before? Now to me, Master Higgins always looked like a baby in a nappy, wearing a cap. Not at all like he does on the cover. I love his determined, slightly worried expression. He's only truly happy when he's riding his skateboard, which definitely isn't true for the player, but more on that later. He has the best idle animation ever. His legs just never stop moving. Also, the art direction in this game always reminded me of Dragon Ball. The gameplay initially seems quite simple, just keep moving to the right until you reach the end of the stage, whilst avoiding the various enemies and obstacles along the way. However, a few things make this game stand out from the other early Game Boy platformers. Firstly, you have an energy bar across the bottom of the screen, but this doesn't track your hit points. This is a one-hit kill kind of game, other than when you're riding a skateboard or a dinosaur, but this energy bar is more like a timer. It constantly counts down whilst you play through a stage, and if it reaches 0 you have to restart the level. Master Higgins can collect fruit or milk bottles to replenish his energy, but can also lose it by tripping on rocks or collecting the eggplant pickup, so you're always pushed to keep moving and to throw yourself into any situation by relying on your reflexes. It adds a fantastic tension to the game, it's a truly edge-of-your-seat moments as you just slip over the finish line on your last bar of energy, which isn't something you'd necessarily expect from a Game Boy port. The second standout feature of this game is the dinosaurs. These are found in eggs throughout the levels and act as mounts, which give the player new abilities and, crucially, an extra hit point. There are 4 dinosaurs. The first one swipes with its tail and lets you walk on ice without sliding around. This one shoots fireballs at enemies and isn't hurt by lava. This Lapras-looking dino is the only one that can go underwater, and the pterodactyl lets the player fly and attacks with rocks. Hands down, the dinosaurs are the best part of the game, and definitely what kept me coming back to it all those years ago. Their design is really appealing, and you feel a real power shift once you hop on one of these critters. This dinosaur was always my favourite. I just love how he turns his head when he shoots a projectile. It reminds me of how Bart Simpson used to turn his head, but not his mouth. It's always sad when you take a hit and lose your dinosaur. You suddenly feel a lot more vulnerable without them. The third interesting aspect is the inventory screen. During stages, players open eggs to collect pickups such as axes or dinosaurs to help them progress. Between levels, an inventory screen is displayed, allowing you to freely choose to take either a previously collected axe, dinosaur, or both into the upcoming stage. This adds a fun dynamic to the gameplay. Do you leave your axe in the locker for another level, leaving you with no means of attack, but knowing you'll likely collect another one before long? Or should you bring along your dinosaur for that extra hit point and greater firepower? What if you need the dino for the following stage for their unique abilities? Having these choices gives a sort of continuity to the game, rather than starting every level with no items, and also adds to the replayability, as you can make the game easier or tougher depending on what you take into each stage. So what don't I like about Adventure Island? Well, first of all, it has to be the skateboard. This collectible gives you both a speed boost and an extra hit point, and whilst it initially sounds useful, when you're on the skateboard it constantly pulls you to the right, so you can't go back for anything you've missed, and it's way too easy to fall into a pit, or collide with an enemy for a cheap death. As a kid, I used to enjoy the challenge of the skateboard, seeing how far through a stage I could get, but these days I pretty much try to dispose of it as quickly as possible. My other criticism is that the game is just too easy. It's been so long since I first played it that I can't comment on the difficulty for a newcomer, but it's definitely on the easier side of platformers. There are a few enemy types, but most that have an attack pattern more advanced than the classic Goomba menacing walk. One or two bosses pose a challenge, but they all follow the same formula, so as long as you have the right dinosaur, you're usually okay. I think the positive side of the low difficulty is that it makes Adventure Island a fun and relaxing game to play with a podcast on. It's a surefire comfort game for me. If you're a fan of the Game Boy or retro platformers, then definitely check out Adventure Island. It's a little on the easy side, but excellent features like the energy bar and inventory system make it stand out. Plus you get to ride dinosaurs. Are you an Adventure Island fan, or are you thinking of giving it a go? Do you have any suggestions for other games I should cover? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. I've been a Turtles fan as long as I can remember. I grew up with the 80s cartoon, the toys, and the live-action movies. I've never stopped following the franchise, enjoying many of the TV series over the years. These days, I mostly enjoy Turtles through the excellent comics, from the gritty origins of the characters in the Eastman and Laird run to the sprawling IDW series, and most recently the 2024 relaunch, which promises to bring some fresh and exciting ideas to the heroes in a half-shell. Another element of TMNT I've always enjoyed are the video games. Back in the day, my brothers and I would spend a lot of time, and money, on the fantastic Konami Turtles arcade machine while on family holidays. But the first Turtles game I owned, and the topic for today's video, is Fall of the Foot Clan for the Game Boy. So, let's go Ninja Go, and check it out. Fall of the Foot Clan is a side-scrolling action game, akin to a simplified version of Double Dragon or Shinobi, that was released in 1990. April O'Neil has been kidnapped. Again. Yawn. Not least of all for her, and you need to battle through 5 stages in order to rescue the intrepid reporter. You have 3 attacks at your disposal: a hit with your primary weapon, a long-range shuriken throw, activated by attacking when crouched, and a flying kick. The end of each level is guarded by a boss character you must defeat to progress. When you boot up the game and pass the title, the next thing you see is the level select screen. This isn't a strictly linear game, and allows you to choose your favourite stage to begin from. As this game doesn't have a save or password function, it's great to have the option to return to the level you lost on, especially for younger players. It's worth noting though, that you only get the full ending cutscene if you play through the game fully from stage 1. Now, the real highlight of this screen for me is the ability to change the button layout. It's not something revolutionary for a game, but I really appreciate that it's not hidden away in a settings menu and is offered to you every time you pick up the game. Next up, you get to choose your turtle. All 4 are present and correct, and the turtles themselves act as your lives in the game. As you play, if your selected turtle takes too much damage, they get captured. At this point you return to the character select screen where the captured turtle is now greyed out. So overall, you get 4 lives before game over, and, as there's no way to bring back a captured turtle, you've got to practice if you want to get through the whole game with your favourite character in one piece. Due to the Game Boy's limited palette of green, the turtles all look the same, lacking the colourful punch of their bandanas. However, the developers managed to sprinkle a bit of character into the animation of each turtle. I love how the turtles twirl their weapons as they walk. There are 5 stages, with most of them having several areas you transition through, such as going from the sewers to a busy New York street. You'll fight huge swathes of the Foot Clan, but also several enemies unique to each stage, like fish, bats, and weird sentient flames. Some levels have moving obstacles that almost fill the screen, like the motorbike on the first level, and the spikes on wheels in stage 4. These certainly keep you on your toes with everything else going on. Level 3 was always my favourite. As a child, it felt like a dynamic, thrilling chase along the freeway. Even today, the simple sense of movement provided by the roadside lights is quite effective. I love how this foot soldier looks like he's throwing a Tetronimo. This game features some of the most bizarre and fun bonus stages I've ever played. For a start, the way you find them is pretty unique. In Fall of the Foot Clan, you find the bonuses by crouching or jumping in very particular spots. You've probably noticed a lot of crouching in my footage as I searched for them. This sounds quite infuriating, but is actually pretty rewarding, and I was surprised at how many locations I could still remember after so long. The bonus stages themselves are all different and have nothing to do with the main levels, or with the Turtles franchise for that matter, which makes them stand out. There are 3 bonus levels, and beating any of them fully restores your health. The first minigame pits you against Master Splinter in a match of higher or lower. Splinter picks a number between 1 and 999, and you get 10 chances to guess it. After each failed try, Splinter tells you if your guess was higher or lower than the answer. The second stage sees you take on Krang in a battle of wits, removing shurikens in an attempt to not be left with the final one. The third and final bonus level is a shooting game. You need to hit a set amount of targets that fly across the screen to win. Given the repetition of the level-to-level gameplay in the main game, these bonus stages really break up the pace and are always fun to take on. Now it's time for the first edition of Did They Really Print That? Bringing you examples of funny and mildly offensive remarks from game manuals of old. Fall of the Foot Clan's manual is a treasure trove of 90s catchphrases and awful alliteration. Parts of this manual really made me laugh out loud. Here's a few examples. Nintendo will appear, followed by an ultra cool logo, then the Turtles' seal of approval, and finally a message from your favourite foursome. In other words, don't try to pull the old switcheroony in the middle of a stage. There are also different bonus, not to be confused with bogus, stages. Press down to make them get down and get funky. Press in the middle of a jump to kick the life out of an enemy. He's a disciple of the infamous martial artist Vincent Van Vanquish. For some reason they refer to the bosses as super-powered high karate dudes. Being a game from the 90s, they have to refer to April, the only female in the game, as a ravishing TV reporter. Tune in next time for more Did They Really Print That? Thinking about the positives and negatives of this game, the biggest selling point to me has to be the music. There are some fantastic tracks here that have stuck with me for over 30 years. They do a great job of conveying the feeling of the stage you're playing, whether it be the excitement of a freeway chase, or the careful exploration of the ravine. This also extends to the sound effects, which are very distinctive and have the right level of crunch to each impact. I'm also a fan of the short cutscenes between stages that help to tie things together just a little bit. On the negative side, the worst thing in the game is the repetition of the gameplay. Side-scrolling action games are repetitive by their nature. Fall of the Foot Clan is held back by one core aspect: combat. Seeing as how fighting is the main focus of the game, I wish more had been done to differentiate the way that the Turtles attack. Whether you use Leonardo's swords or Raphael's sais, all of the weapons have the same reach and deal the same damage, so there's no advantage to, say, using Donatello's bow staff for extra reach, or Michelangelo's nunchucks for speed, which is disappointing. Mechanically, I understand why it's this way as a Game Boy game, but I do think the developers could have included a unique special move for each of the brothers that could have shown off their weapon and personality to greater effect. The other issue is the size of the sprites. On the one hand, it's great to see the Turtles taking up a large part of the screen so that you can appreciate the sprite work and animations. However, this results in a limited view of the upcoming stage and often feels like enemies spawn on the edge of the screen for every step that you take. Overall, I'd recommend this game to any fan of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. It features many of the great villains, represented in a fantastic 8-bit style. The gameplay, though repetitive, is fun, but the music is the real star of the show. Once played, you'll be humming the tunes for years to come. I wouldn't particularly recommend Fall of the Foot Clan to gamers without a soft spot for the heroes in a half shell. As a side-scroller, it's functional enough, but it's very basic, quite easy, and the confined field of view gives you very little time to anticipate enemy attacks. So, it's one for the fans really. Do you have good memories of Fall of the Foot Clan on the Game Boy? Or have you played either of the sequels? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. One of the strangest toy lines to release in the 90s was the Incredible Crash Dummies. The franchise was based on a series of public service adverts for seatbelt safety in the USA. As an adult, it's hard not to look at the toy line through a critical lens for glorifying car accidents to children, rather than promoting safety as intended. But at the time there was nothing else quite like them, combining cartoon characters with realistic destruction. I had many of the action figures and adored the half-hour animated special, which was one of the first times I'd seen CGI used in a TV show. My love for the Crash Dummies franchise spilt over into video games, and it was one of the first cartridges I got for my Game Boy. So let's buckle up and check out the Incredible Crash Dummies. Releasing in 1992, the Incredible Crash Dummies is a collection of 5 minigames. The premise is that Slick and Spin want to save for a holiday, but their job as Crash Dummies doesn't pay enough, so they get a week's worth of jobs on the side to fund the trip. The game has 4 difficulty levels. You play through the 5 minigames on easy, then repeat on medium, hard and very hard modes. Each week ramps up the difficulty by introducing new obstacles or increasing the speed of the stage. Let's have a look at the minigames in more detail. Day 1 sees the dummies take on work as stuntmen for a movie, jumping from the top of a burning building. You need to guide the dummy down, crashing through as many awnings and balconies as possible to earn extra money, while avoiding the fires. At the end of the fall, there's a target you must crash into to complete the level. Your dummy has 3 positions you can switch between. Free fall, which is the standard speed, pressing up assumes the dive bomb stance, which slows your descent, and pressing down puts you into the dive position, and greatly increases your speed. Playing on the harder difficulties adds birds to avoid, and makes use of the flagpoles for crossing from one side of the building to the other, as well as upping the amount of overall hazards. I like this stage. It controls well, and has a good amount of replayability in trying to smash through every obstacle for a high score, and, as it isn't procedurally generated, you can learn the layout and get better each time. Day 2 puts the dummies back in their comfort zone, behind the wheel of a car. This time, Spin and Slick are testing airbags, but the airbags are not inflated yet, and it's your job to collect cans of air along the way. At the end of the stage is a huge magnet to smash into and test out those airbags you've been inflating, in true Crash Dummies fashion. You gain cash by hitting cones, collecting air cans and grabbing money pickups. However, hitting gates and driving over cracks will cause you to lose air, potentially leading to a failed attempt when you hit the magnet. Your car can also break down from too much damage, so you need to collect spanners en route to stay in shape. The higher difficulties add pedestrian dummies for you to avoid, as well as dead ends. I've always liked this level too. The car doesn't handle brilliantly, but the concept is very true to the Crash Dummies brand. Day 3 sees the dummies testing a new ski slope. The goal here is to hit as many flags as possible on the way down, whilst avoiding trees and snowdrifts. Hitting trees is an instant fail, and snowdrifts cause you to roll away in a snowball, missing flags and wasting precious time. You get extra money for taking out the snowmen. It's always fun lopping their heads off. You have a jump button on this stage, but I never found it that useful, as the dummies leap way too far, so you're likely to land on a tree. The other difficulty options increase the number of flags you need to ski through, and position the flags in ever more precarious places. This was, and still is, my favourite minigame. It's quite challenging without being unfair, and has great music. I'm not sure why, but I think I just like skiing in video games. A little tip: it isn't listed in the manual, but if you hold the A button, your dummy will turn more sharply, making it easier to zip between the flags. Day 4 introduces a bizarre minigame. The dummies are working in quality control at a munitions factory, except some of the bombs are coming down the 3 conveyor belts already lit, and Crash Dummy body parts have also gotten into the mix. Your task is to blow out the lit bombs, let the unlit bombs through, and remove the dummy parts by hitting them with a hammer. If a lit bomb gets through, it will stop that production line and increase the speed of the others. This stage is kind of like a rhythm game once you get going, and the fun comes from trying to remember which button blows out the fuses, which one swings your hammer, and doing all of this under the pressure of 3 moving conveyor belts. It can quickly become overwhelming, especially on higher difficulties. The thing that always caught me out is how continuing to move in one direction off screen teleports you to the opposite side, so it's easy to lose your bearings. By no means the worst minigame. I'm looking at you, Space Missile level. I don't find this one as fun as the others, perhaps because you're confined to just one screen. Finally, Day 5 is reserved for the worst minigame of the bunch, the Space Missile stage. This involves guiding a missile from a launch platform, avoiding walls, vortexes, and other missiles before crashing into a small target. The main issue with this level is purely the controls, which sap all of the fun out of it. It seems the developers were aware of the difficulty, as it's the only minigame that has a tip in the game manual. You direct your missile in 360 degrees and then use the A button to fire your engines. This sounds simple enough, but the missile builds up such a strong momentum that you spend most of your time trying to slow down and avoid walls, which leaves you completely open to the obstacles headed your way. This is a one-hit fail mission too, so you have to fly perfectly to reach the goal, which is usually accomplished through sheer luck. Trust me, the image of the crumpled missile will be burnt into your memory forever after a few rounds of this stage. The other stages start mildly and become more difficult as you work through the weeks, but the missile minigame is just tough from the get-go. Once, and if, you complete this level, you'll have no time to rest as it's week 2, and straight back into the first minigame of jumping from the burning building, but on medium difficulty. Weeks 2, 3 and 4 play out the minigames in the same order as week 1, with each run upping the difficulty. Now it's time for another edition of Did They Really Print That? Bringing you examples of funny and mildly offensive remarks from game manuals of old. The Incredible Crash Dummies booklet is full of classic Crash Dummies art. But I have to mention the Incredible Crash Dummy trivia test. This is a page of jokes that start off quite innocently. What is a Crash Dummy's favourite sport? Basketball. But then take a dark turn. Check out these supposed jokes from the manual for a kids game. What's the first thing that goes through your head when you find yourself in an accident without your safety belt buckled? The windshield. What's the one thing a person who doesn't use safety belts will never see? Old age. I guess they were going for the shock value. It makes me wonder what else we're going to find in these old game manuals. Tune in next time for another exciting edition of Did They Really Print That? So, how does Incredible Crash Dummies hold up nowadays? Surprisingly well, actually. The minigame format works great, especially for a handheld system like the Game Boy, with most of the stages lasting 2 minutes or less, perfect for a bus or car journey. A run through the 5 minigames can be completed in under 10 minutes when you know what you're doing, so it really excels in short bursts. As a kid, I would usually get games for birthdays or Christmas, so this felt like getting 5 games in one, and kept me coming back for years. I particularly wanted to highlight the great animation in the game. There were some really nice touches, like the way the dummies nervously edge across the rooftop on stage 1 before comically diving into danger, or how the car sprite on level 2 scales when hitting the ramp to give the impression of depth. Simple, but very effective to my younger self. On the negative side, the main letdown is the missile stage. It's just too twitchy to control, and the one-hit kills hamper it. I've never actually gotten past the missile stage on week 3, so I'm not even sure how the game ends. I also wish there was a way to skip a minigame, or select which one you want to play, and at which difficulty, so that you could practice it, or just keep returning to your favourites. It's a shame we never got a sequel, as I would have loved another selection of minigames with a few quality of life improvements. Overall, I really enjoyed revisiting the Incredible Crash Dummies. The minigames themselves were a lot of fun. They all play uniquely, and are very replayable. Whilst it doesn't have the high score chasing potential of a puzzle game, I feel that the wackiness of some of the stages, coupled with the appealing art style, make this a great option for younger gamers, or those looking for a hit of 90s nostalgia from one of the strangest IPs in existence. Have you played Incredible Crash Dummies? What's your favourite minigame? Ever made it to week 4? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Back in the 90s, the console wars between Nintendo and Sega were being waged in playgrounds up and down the land. I came from a mostly Sega family, so we had the Master System, Mega Drive, and Game Gear growing up. I did, however, have a Game Boy, and although I had friends who owned the NES and SNES, the Game Boy was often the place where I was first introduced to Nintendo's characters in a meaningful way. One of those characters was actually Mario. I'd played the first 3 Super Mario games on the NES at friends' houses, but I'd never had a decent amount of time to really get to grips with the series. That all changed when I got my Game Boy in Super Mario Land. So, let's dust off that cart and check out Super Mario Land. As one of the Game Boy's launch titles, Super Mario Land brought everyone's favourite plumber out of the living room, mixing the Mario you knew with all new levels and gameplay styles. When I received this game, alongside Tetris, I absolutely fell in love with it. Working up a sweat in Tetris, then popping this cart in for some relaxing platforming, made for top-notch gaming. Let's take a look at how Super Mario Land plays with the Mario formula. First up is the control of Mario himself. Having played many of the Mario games now, I can feel the subtle changes in how he controls in Mario Land. If you hold the B button to run, Mario sort of lurches forward to get up to speed, which can really catch you out when platforming. It's hard to explain, but Mario just controls a little differently in this game. I didn't realise this back in the day, and I think it's fine, as you adjust quite quickly when playing the game. Next up, it's the story and setting. Now, Mario games aren't really known for their layered stories, but for its time, Mario Land hosts some quite unique elements. We're not in the Mushroom Kingdom in this game, but Sarasaland, and Bowser is not the antagonist this time around. Instead, we're facing the evil alien Tatanga. It wouldn't be a Mario game without a captive princess, and Mario Land introduces us to Daisy, who has now become quite a mainstay in the series. So we're already in unknown territory, quite literally. Sarasaland is made up of 4 kingdoms, each containing 3 stages: Birabuto, Muda, Eastern, and Chai. In an unusual move for the series, these are all based on real-world locations: Egypt, Bermuda, Easter Island, and China. There are lots of details in the stages to represent their influences, such as hieroglyphs, Moai statues, and pyramids. The enemies are also different from the usual Mario fare. We've got Goombas and Koopa Troopers. They have different names in the manual, but we all know what they are. And then we have all manner of bizarre bad guys like Daddy Longlegs, Living Sphinx, Fish Skeletons, and my personal favourite, Rock Guy. Even the enemies that we know sometimes behave differently. Take the Koopa Troopers. Try to pick up one of their shells and you're likely to get yourself blown up. The levels themselves also play with the rules. The end of each stage has a small platforming challenge. Completing this and exiting via the upper door will take you to the bonus stage, which can reward you with up to 3 extra lives. One of the biggest departures in Super Mario Land are the shoot-'em-up levels. There are 2 of these. One sees Mario take control of Marine Pop, a submarine, and in the other he pilots Sky Pop, an airplane. These levels are a lot of fun to play, provide a welcome change of pace to the platforming. You're pretty overpowered in these vehicles, so they're just an excuse to mow down countless sea and air critters. The final change I'm going to cover is actually the most jarring for the player when swapping between the mainline Mario games and Super Mario Land. At least it was for me, and that's the Fire Flower. If you didn't read the manual, you would expect this power-up to bounce along the floor until it collides with an enemy. However, this isn't the Fire Flower, it's the Super Ball. These projectiles bounce off surfaces at 90-degree angles. This is very useful for hitting airborne enemies or for collecting out-of-reach coins, which is a fun mechanic. The downside being the initial throw is very shallow, meaning you need to be extremely close to your target in order to hit them. It definitely takes some time to retrain your mind to this new behaviour. So those are the main differences between the handheld and console games. What made me love this game so much? The first thing was the presentation. I love the graphical design of Mario Land, stripping back the sprites of Mario and his enemies to their monochrome basics. Even without colour, the familiar characters are easily recognisable. Mario has a surprising number of frames to his animation, and everything is really clean. I like the variety in the stage designs. They could have used simple hills or abstract shapes for the backgrounds, but each kingdom, and each level within it, has thoughtful elements that make them all memorable. If you've watched my other videos, you'll know that I'm a fan of video game music. Super Mario Land is probably the first gaming soundtrack that really got its claws into me. The main theme is so catchy and perfectly encapsulates the game, a light, breezy Mario adventure. Each kingdom has its own theme, as well as an additional song for the shoot-'em-up stages. They're all great, but I wanted to give the ending theme a mention, as it's fantastic. Also, in what other game can you gain invulnerability whilst listening to the can-can? The sound effects are quite true to the mainline Mario games, except for some of the enemies, who make hilarious noises when you hit them. Probably the most memorable part of Mario Land are the Princess Daisy fake-outs. After defeating the boss in each kingdom, you'll rescue Princess Daisy, only for the princess to morph into an enemy and bound away. A tiny cutscene that never fails to raise a smile. The only negative part of the game is the relative shortness of the adventure. It can be completed in an hour, and with the surplus of coins and bonus stages, you'll have more than enough lives to breeze through it. This isn't really a complaint though, as this was a game for playing on the go, long before save states and quick resume were the norm. Something I only learned whilst putting this video together is the game actually has a hard mode, which can be accessed by restarting the game straight after completing it. You'll see that the title screen cursor changes to a Mario head, meaning hard mode is active. This difficulty adds different enemies to the stages, and more of them, than the normal mode. I definitely recommend playing through Super Mario Land, especially if you're a fan of Mario or Game Boy platformers. It's simple, fun, and adds some interesting quirks to the Mario formula. I think it's a must-play for the Game Boy. Do you have fond memories of Super Mario Land? Or do you think they went too far with some of the deviations from the Mario rulebook? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching.